The stars looked beautiful from the bridge of the UES Eternal Dawn. Admiral Park stood with his hands behind his back, watching the lights of 100 ships move slowly through the darkness. Today was a special day. 10 years ago, humanity had signed the Friendship Treaty with the 10 years of peace, 10 years of gifts. Remembered when the first came to Earth. He was a young man then, working as a junior officer on a small patrol ship. The whole world had stopped when the alien vessels appeared in the sky. Tall beings with silver skin and voices like music stepped out of their ships. They smiled at humanity and offered them everything. Clean energy that never ran out. Medicine that cured diseases humans had suffered from for centuries. Ships that could travel faster than light itself. And what did they want in return? Nothing. Just friendship. Just the chance to learn about human culture, human art, human music. They called humans their little brothers in the stars. The whole galaxy had seemed dark and empty before they came. Now it felt like home. Turned as his communications officer spoke. The celebration was about to begin. Ships from 12 human colonies had gathered here, along with the delegation. Ambassador would give the opening speech, as she always did. She had spent 20 years building the relationship between humans and she truly believed they were humanity's greatest friends. Everyone believed that. On the lower deck, Lieutenant Commander sat alone in the intelligence office. The celebration did not interest her. She had work to do. For the past 6 months, she had been organizing old communication files. Boring work. Routine work. The kind of task they gave to officers who asked too many questions. Was very good at asking questions. She scrolled through another batch of old transmissions. Diplomatic messages, trade agreements, cultural exchanges. Nothing unusual, but something felt wrong. She had noticed it 3 weeks ago. Small things at first. A transmission that seemed too long for its content. A file that was larger than it should be. Patterns that repeated in ways that made no sense. Tonight, she had finally cracked one of them. Her fingers trembled as she read the data on her screen. It was a list. Names, ages, physical descriptions, all human. Thousands of them, and next to each name was a date, a location, and a series of numbers she did not understand. The dates went back over 100 years, before they ever made contact with Earth. Felt cold. She saved the file to a secure drive and kept digging. Far away on a small research vessel called the Morning Star, Doctor could not sleep. She sat in her laboratory, staring at a sample of soil from the colony world of Nu. The colony was only 8 years old. Humans had built it on a world they said was empty, perfect for farming, perfect for families. But the soil was wrong. Had found a biological compound in it, a protein chain that should not exist on an alien world. She had tested it 47 times. The result was always the same. The protein was human. Not just similar to human, identical. The exact genetic markers found in human tissue, human blood, human bone. And it was old, very old. The soil samples came from deep underground, from layers that had formed hundreds of years ago, long before any human had ever set foot on Nu. Told herself there must be a mistake. She told herself to run the tests again, but her hands would not move. Deep in her heart, she already knew the truth. She just did not want to believe it. She opened her communication terminal and wrote a message to her brother. He worked in the government's classified records division. If anyone could help her understand what she had found, it was him. She sent the message and waited. On Earth, received the message while eating a late dinner in his small apartment. He read his sister's words 3 times. Then he put down his food and walked to his office. The Classified Records Division was quiet at night, had access to files that most people did not know existed, old reports, buried investigations, things the government had decided to forget. He started searching. It did not take long to find the first anomaly. In 2089, a colony ship carrying 3,000 people had disappeared on its way to Mars. The official report said a solar storm had destroyed it. No bodies were ever recovered. In 2102, a mining settlement on Europa went dark overnight. 2,000 workers, gone. The report blamed a reactor failure. In 2131, an entire agricultural colony on Titan stopped responding to communications. By the time rescue ships arrived, the colony was empty. No signs of violence, no signs of evacuation, just silence. Kept searching, the list grew longer. Tens of thousands of people vanished over decades, all blamed on accidents, all forgotten. He pulled up the astronomical data from those dates. Strange readings, unexplained energy signatures, patterns that modern scientists now recognized. Ship signatures. Sat back in his chair. His heart was beating fast. His hands were shaking. They had not found humanity 10 years ago. They had been watching for much longer, taking people, hiding the evidence. And then, when humanity grew too strong to prey upon secretly, they changed their approach. They became friends instead. On the eternal dawn, Ambassador raised her glass. Around her, humans smiled and cheered. The celebration continued late into the night. No one noticed Lieutenant Commander leave the party early. No one saw the look on her face as she walked back to her quarters, her secure drive hidden in her pocket. No one knew that everything was about to change. Did not sleep that night. He could not sleep. The files on his screen told a story that no one had ever wanted to hear, a story written in disappearances and silence. He made a list of every vanished colony, every lost ship, every forgotten settlement. When he finished, the number made him sick. 47,000 people, gone over 60 years, before they ever showed their faces to Earth. The official records blamed accidents, equipment failures, human mistakes, but knew better now. He could see the pattern. Every disappearance happened within weeks of strange energy readings in nearby space, readings that matched technology exactly. They had been hunting humans for decades. He sent a secure message to his sister. Then he sent another to a contact in military intelligence. Then he waited. On the eternal dawn worked through the night as well. The encrypted files were difficult to break, but she was patient. She was careful, and she was very, very angry. By morning, she had decoded 3 more hidden transmissions. They were cargo manifests, inventory lists, the kind of documents a shipping company might use to track products moving between warehouses. But the cargo was not products, the cargo was people. Each entry listed a human being by age, weight, and genetic profile. There were notes about health conditions, marks indicating quality, prices. Read one entry that made her stop breathing. Female, age 7, healthy, strong bone structure, suitable for long-term processing. Processing. The word burned in her mind. She thought about her own daughter, sleeping safely on Earth. She thought about all the children who had been taken while the world believed they died in accidents. She saved everything and went to find Admiral Park. Was in his quarters when arrived. He could see something was wrong. The young officer's face was pale and her hands were shaking. She handed him a data tablet without speaking. He read for a long time. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. When he finished, set down the tablet. His face showed no emotion, but his eyes were different. Something had died in them, something else had woken up. "My grandfather," he said quietly, "was on the colony ship that disappeared in 2089, the one they said was destroyed by a solar storm. I was 7 years old. I remember my grandmother crying for months. I remember wondering why my grandfather left us without saying goodbye. He did not leave us, they took him. Sir, what do we do?" Stood up slowly. "We find out everything, and then we make them pay." Anu received her brother's message. The information he sent confirmed her worst fears. The protein in the soil was not a mystery. It was evidence. evidence of what they had done to humans long before any colony was built on that world. They had used Nu as a processing site, a place to break down human bodies and extract useful materials. The compound in the soil was made from bones, blood, and tissue. Thousands of people, reduced to biological waste, walked outside her laboratory. The colony spread out before her, families working in fields, children playing in the streets, all of them living on top of a mass grave. She needed more proof. She needed to understand the full picture. She began collecting samples from other areas, running tests, building a case. The truth was too big to ignore, but it was also too dangerous to share openly. Admiral Park called an emergency meeting on Earth. The location was secret. The attendees were few. Fleet Commander Shin arrived first, a young woman with sharp eyes and a reputation for aggressive tactics. Intelligence Director Han Minyu came next, an older man who had spent his career trusting the. President Lee arrived last. She was a small woman with gray hair and a calm voice, but everyone in the room knew that she had led humanity through 3 major crises. She was not someone who panicked easily. Presented the evidence, explained the encrypted transmissions, attending by secure video link, shared the historical records, showed her biological analysis. When they finished, the room was silent for a long time. President Lee spoke first. Her voice was steady, but there was something cold beneath the words. "How long have they been doing this?" "At least 100 years, answered. "Maybe longer. We do not have records going back further." "And they are still doing it now?" Nodded. "The latest cargo manifest I decoded is from 3 months ago. 1,200 humans, taken from outer colony worlds. Destinations listed as processing centers." Director Han shook his head. "This cannot be true. I have worked with them for 20 years. They have never shown any sign of." "That is exactly the point," Commander Shin interrupted. "They are very good at hiding what they are. They smiled at us while they ate our children. They gave us gifts while they counted us like cattle." President Lee raised her hand. The room went quiet. "I have heard enough," she said. "The question now is not whether this is true. The evidence is clear. The question is what we do about it." She looked at each person in the room. They believe we are their friends. They believe we trust them completely. They have no idea that we know the truth. Her eyes grew hard. "I intend to keep it that way, until we are ready to make them answer for what they have done." Admiral Park nodded slowly. "Then we need a plan." "We need more than a plan," President Lee replied. "We need justice, and justice in this case will require patience. It will require secrecy, and it will require a level of anger that we cannot show until the time is right." She stood up. "Begin preparations immediately. Tell no one outside this room. They will continue to believe they are safe. They will continue to smile and shake our hands. And when the moment comes, they will learn what happens when you betray humanity." The meeting ended. The attendees left separately, returning to their duties as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. The war had already begun. They just did not know it yet. The plan was called Operation Silent Dawn. It would take 1 year to complete. 1 year of lies, 1 year of smiles, 1 year of shaking hands with the creatures who had murdered humanity's children. President Lee gave the order personally. Every person involved understood the weight of what they were doing. They would pretend to be friends while preparing for war. They would laugh at jokes while building weapons to destroy them. They would attend diplomatic meetings while counting down the days until revenge. It was the hardest thing any of them had ever done. Admiral Park returned to the Eternal Dawn and continued his duties as if nothing had changed. He attended celebrations. He gave speeches about friendship between species. He smiled until his face hurt. At night, alone in his quarters, he looked at old photographs of his grandfather. Park had been a good man, a family man. He had volunteered for the colony mission because he wanted to build a better future for his children. Instead, he had been taken by monsters and processed like meat. Made a promise to that photograph. He would make them pay, every single one of them. Lieutenant Commander became the center of a secret intelligence operation. Her job was to feed false information to spies. She created fake reports, fake fleet movements, fake research data. They believed they knew everything about human military strength. They believed humans were weak and grateful and completely under control. They believed exactly what wanted them to believe. Commander Shin took charge of building the Black Fleet. These were ships that did not officially exist. They were constructed in hidden facilities carved into asteroids far from any colony. The workers lived in complete isolation. They could not contact their families. They could not leave until the job was done. They did not complain. Every worker knew why they were there. Many of them had lost family members to harvests. They worked double shifts. They slept 4 hours a night. They built the weapons that would end power forever. Doctor continued her research on Nu, but now her work had a different purpose. She was not just studying biology anymore. She was finding weaknesses, points of attack, ways to hurt them without killing them. Killing was too easy, too quick, wanted something worse. She developed a biological agent that would target reproductive systems. It would not cause pain. It would not cause death. It would simply make them unable to have children, ever again. They would live. They would watch their species slowly fade away. They would know that they brought this fate upon themselves. Tested the agent carefully. She made sure it would not affect humans. She made sure it would spread quickly through populations. When she was satisfied, she sent the formula to a secure military laboratory for mass production. On Earth, continued digging through old records. Every week he found more evidence, more names, more victims. He created a database of every human that had ever taken. It grew to over 200,000 entries. 200,000 people, erased from history, forgotten by everyone except their families. Made sure their names would never be forgotten again. The Black Fleet grew in the darkness between stars. Captain was chosen to lead it. He was young, only 32, but he had already proven himself in dozens of missions. More importantly, he had personal reasons to want them destroyed. His great-grandmother had been on a transport ship that disappeared in 2076. The official report said it was destroyed by debris, but research showed that a vessel had been in the same area at the exact time of the disappearance. Had grown up hearing stories about his great-grandmother, how kind she was, how much she loved her family. Now he knew the truth about what happened to her. He accepted command of the Black Fleet without hesitation. His second-in-command was O. She was older than and much more experienced. She had served in the regular fleet for 15 years before being recruited for this mission. Her reasons for joining were simple. 12 years ago, her entire extended family had died in a colonial disaster on a moon called Bright Harbor. 47 people, parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, children, all dead in what the official report called a reactor failure. Had always suspected something was wrong. The reactor had been inspected just days before the disaster. There was no reason for it to fail, but she had no proof, so she stayed silent. Now she had proof. Bright Harbor was not an accident. It was a harvest. Her family had been taken, processed, and erased from existence. Gathered her crew on the bridge of the flagship Black Sun. These were volunteers, every one of them. People who had lost family to treachery. People who understood that they might not survive what was coming. She looked at their faces, young and old, men and women, all of them carrying the same cold fire in their eyes. "They believe they know us," said. "They believe we are soft, forgiving, grateful for their gifts. They believe we will never fight back because we are too kind." She paused, letting the words settle. "They are wrong. Kindness is not weakness. Forgiveness is not mandatory. They had a choice. They could have been true friends. Instead, they chose to hunt us, to eat our children, to smile while they measured us for slaughter. Her voice grew harder. We will show them what humans do when they are betrayed. We will teach them that our memory is long and our anger is patient. And when we are finished, they will remember our faces for the rest of their existence. The crew did not cheer. They did not shout. They simply nodded, their eyes cold with purpose. Across human space, preparations continued in perfect silence. They suspected nothing. Their spies reported that humans were happy and peaceful. Their diplomats received warm welcomes at every colony. Their trade ships moved freely through human territory. They had no idea that every smile was a lie. Every handshake was a countdown. 1 year passed. The Black Fleet was ready. The weapons were complete. The biological agents were prepared. Operation Silent Dawn was about to begin. It was called. It was a beautiful planet covered in silver forests and crystal lakes. They had lived there for 10,000 years. They considered themselves the most advanced species in the galaxy. They believed no one could threaten them. They were wrong. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, watching the Black Fleet emerge from hidden space. 1,000 ships appeared from nothing, their dark hulls gleaming in the light of the sun. They had traveled for weeks through secret routes, avoiding every patrol, every sensor, every detection system. Now they were here, right above the heart of civilization. The High Council received a transmission request from Earth. They expected routine diplomatic greetings, perhaps some trade discussions, nothing important. Instead, they saw Admiral Park's face on their screens. Behind him, they could see the massed human fleet, ships of a type they had never seen before, weapons pointed directly at their cities. The High Speaker rose from his seat, confusion on his silver face. Park began to speak. 50 years ago you came to Earth. You offered us your hand, you called us friends, brothers, family. We believed you, we trusted you, we loved you. His voice was calm, steady, but something terrible lived beneath the words. We found the farms. We counted the bones. We read your cargo manifests. We know what you did to our people when we were too weak to stop you. We know what you continued to do while we thanked you for your kindness. The High Speaker tried to respond. His mouth opened, but Park continued speaking. My grandfather was named Park. He was 42 years old. He had a wife and 3 children who spent their lives wondering why he abandoned them. He did not abandon them. You took him. You processed him. You erased him. Park's eyes were cold as ice. Today, we return the favor. The transmission ended. The attack began. Captain led the first wave. His target was the military headquarters in orbit above. The structure was massive, larger than any human space station. It controlled every defensive system on the planet. Had studied its weaknesses for months. He knew exactly where to strike. The Black Fleet moved like ghosts. Their ships were smaller than vessels, but faster, much faster. They slipped between defensive lines before they could react. They struck critical systems before alarms could sound. The military headquarters lost power in the first 3 minutes. Emergency systems failed in the next 2. By the time commanders understood what was happening, their entire defense network was blind. Commander led the second wave. Her target was the breeding facilities on the northern continent. This was where they kept human prisoners for harvesting. Thousands of people living in cells, waiting to be processed. Ships landed in a ring around the largest facility. Her soldiers moved through the corridors with cold efficiency. They did not kill the guards. They simply disabled them and moved on. The prisoners were confused at first. Many of them had been born in captivity. They had never seen the sky. They had never known that rescue was possible. Found a young girl, maybe 8 years old, hiding in a corner. The girl looked at her with eyes that had never known hope. "Who are you?" the girl asked. "I am human," said, "just like you, and I am taking you home." Across, similar scenes played out at every facility. Humans who had been raised like animals saw their first friendly faces. Families that had been separated for generations were reunited. The cries of joy mixed with the sounds of battle. Captain pushed his assault on the orbital defenses. His ship took heavy damage in the fighting. Systems failed one by one. The hull began to crack. He ordered his crew to evacuate. They refused, every one of them. "We finish this together," his first officer said. Nodded. He aimed his dying ship at the central command station of the defense grid. The impact would destroy the last military capability in orbit. He opened a broadcast on all channels. "My great-grandmother's name was. She was taken from her family in 2076. She died alone in a place far from home, but she is not forgotten. None of them are forgotten, and neither am I." The ship hit the station at full speed. The explosion lit up the sky above. Commander watched from the ground. She said a quiet prayer for and his crew. Then she returned to work. Doctor arrived with the final phase of the operation. Her biological agents were loaded in special delivery systems. They would spread through the atmosphere, carried by wind and water. Within weeks, every on the planet would be infected. The agent worked perfectly. It caused no pain. It showed no symptoms. It simply made the unable to reproduce. They would live out their natural lives. They would grow old. They would watch their children grow old. But there would be no more children after that. No more generations. No more future. The species would fade away slowly, gently, permanently. Admiral Park landed on 3 days after the assault began. He walked through the ruins of the High Council chamber. Officials lay on the ground, disabled but alive. They looked at him with eyes full of fear. Park felt nothing. "You had a choice," he said to them. "You could have been our friends, real friends. Instead, you chose to be monsters. Now you will live with the consequences." He turned and walked away. They called after him, begging for mercy, promising to change, swearing they would do anything to survive. Park did not look back. The war lasted 3 months. They had no answer to human anger. Their military was destroyed in the first days. Their colonies surrendered without fighting. Their population could only watch as everything they had built collapsed around them. When it was over, Admiral Park returned to Earth. He was tired, old, ready to rest. But first, there was one more thing to do. President Lee called a final meeting of the War Council. Everyone who had started this journey was present. They had won. They were defeated. Humanity was safe. But the question remained, what came next? Lee looked at her advisors, her friends, her partners in the long work of justice. "We have broken them," she said. "Now we must decide what to build in their place." The discussion lasted for hours. In the end, they agreed on a simple set of principles. They would never leave there again. Their ships would be destroyed. Their technology would be taken. Human observers would remain on forever, watching, remembering. And the full truth would be told. Every victim would be named. Every crime would be recorded. The universe would know what they had done and what humanity had done in response. There would be no forgiveness. There would be no forgetting. There would only be justice. Cold, permanent, absolute justice. The surrender ceremony took place on a cold morning in the ruins of the capital. President Lee stood on a raised platform, surrounded by human soldiers. Before her, the surviving members of the High Council knelt in the traditional pose of submission. The High Speaker's silver skin had turned gray with age and defeat. His voice, once beautiful and musical, now sounded broken and hollow. "We accept your terms," he said. "We submit to human authority. We ask only for mercy." President Lee looked down at him. Her face showed nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no pity. "You believe this is the end," she said. You believe we will sign papers, impose punishments, and eventually move on. You believe time will heal these wounds, that future generations will forget what you did. She paused, letting the silence grow heavy. We will never forget, we will never forgive. Forgiveness requires something from the one who did wrong. It requires true understanding, true regret, true change. She stepped closer to the kneeling. You are not sorry for what you did. You are only sorry that you were caught. You are sorry that we fought back. You are sorry that you lost. That is not regret. That is disappointment. The High Speaker lowered his head. He had no answer. The terms of surrender were absolute. They would be confined to forever. They could not build ships. They could not develop weapons. They could not communicate with other species without human permission. Human observers would live on permanently. They would watch everything they did. They would record everything they said. They would make sure that no ever forgot why they were being punished. And most importantly, the truth would be preserved forever. Every name of every victim would be recorded in a database that could never be erased. Every detail of crimes would be taught to human children for generations to come. The galaxy would know what happened when you betrayed humanity. Admiral Park retired after the surrender. He was 63 years old, tired in his bones but peaceful in his heart. He had done what he promised his grandfather's photograph. He had made them pay. He moved to a small house near the memorial site. The memorial had grown since the war ended. It now covered an entire hillside, with the names of every known victim carved into black stone. Over 200,000 names, arranged by date of disappearance. Visited the memorial every day. He would walk among the stones, reading names, remembering people he had never met but would never forget. His granddaughter, Park, came to visit him one summer afternoon. She was 24 years old, a newly promoted lieutenant in the peacekeeping fleet. She had been too young to fight in the war, but she had studied it carefully. She found her grandfather sitting on a bench near the center of the memorial, looking at a particular section of stone. The names there were from the colony ship that had disappeared in 2089. Park's name was near the top. Sat down beside him. "Grandfather," she said quietly, "do you think we did the right thing, being so harsh with them?" Considered the question for a long time. The wind moved through the memorial, carrying the smell of flowers planted around the stones. "There is a difference," he said finally, "between mercy and weakness. The confused our kindness for weakness. They saw that we were generous and thought we were foolish. They saw that we were forgiving and thought we were blind." He turned to look at his granddaughter. "Mercy is a gift. We choose to give it. It is not something that can be taken from us. It is not something we owe to everyone equally. When someone hurts us, we can choose to forgive them, but that choice must be ours." He looked back at the memorial. They never gave us that choice. They took and took and took, and they expected us to keep smiling. They expected us to be grateful for the scraps they left behind. They expected us to forgive because they believed we were too weak to do anything else. His voice grew harder. "We showed them that forgiveness is earned. They earned something different." Nodded slowly. She understood. Mercy without strength was just surrender. Forgiveness without justice was just acceptance of abuse. Humanity had learned a hard lesson from the universe was not kind to the weak. The universe did not reward innocence. The only safety came from strength, from vigilance, from the willingness to fight back when necessary. 200 years passed. The population slowly decreased. The biological agent did its work quietly and permanently. Each generation was smaller than the last. Each year brought fewer children, fewer hopes, fewer futures. They did not suffer. They lived comfortable lives on their beautiful planet. They had food and shelter and all the simple pleasures of existence, but they had no future, and they knew why. Humanity, meanwhile, spread across the galaxy. They built colonies on 1,000 worlds. They developed technology that made achievements look primitive. They became one of the most powerful species in known space. The Galactic Council was a federation of 12 spacefaring civilizations. They had watched the human war with great interest. Some of them were horrified by what humanity had done. Others were quietly impressed. When humanity requested membership in the Council, there was a long debate. Many species feared humans. They had seen what happened to the. They did not want to become the next example. The human ambassador was a woman named. She was young for a diplomat, only 42, but she had a reputation for straight talk and clear thinking. She addressed the council directly. "You are afraid of us. I understand. You have seen what we did to the, and you wonder if we might do the same to you." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each representative. "Let me be clear about what happened. They hunted our people for centuries. They killed our children and called us friends. They smiled while they measured us for slaughter. When we discovered the truth, we stopped them. Permanently." She paused. "We do not apologize for this. We do not regret it. They earned their fate through their own choices. If they had been true friends, if they had treated us with basic decency, we would have been the most loyal allies they could imagine. Instead, they chose treachery. We answered in kind." She stepped forward. "Humanity does not hunt the innocent. We do not harvest the helpless. We do not pretend to be friends while planning betrayal. If you extend to us genuine friendship, you will find no species more loyal, no species more generous, no species more willing to stand beside you in times of trouble." Her voice grew firm. "But if you betray us as the did, you will discover that our memory is very, very long. We do not forget. We do not forgive those who do not earn forgiveness, and we do not stop until justice is done." The council voted. The decision was unanimous. Humanity was welcomed as a full member. On the remaining watched the announcement on their screens. There were only a few thousand of them left now. The last generation. Within a century, their species would be extinct. They did not protest. They did not complain. They simply watched and remembered. Somewhere on New, a young girl visited the memorial for the first time. Her teacher had brought her class to learn about history. The girl walked among the stones, reading names she did not recognize. She stopped at one stone and traced the letters with her finger. "Park, 2089. "Who was he?" she asked her teacher. "He was someone's grandfather," the teacher replied. "He was taken by the long time ago. He never came home." The girl thought about this for a moment. "Is that why we remember?" she asked. "So he is not alone anymore?" The teacher smiled sadly. "Yes, that is exactly why we remember. So none of them are alone anymore. So none of them are forgotten." The girl nodded. She placed a small flower at the base of the stone, as she had seen other visitors do. Then she moved on to read more names. The memorial stood in silence, keeping its watch over the dead. Humanity remembered. Humanity always remembered.